All right. We might have a small crowd today. I reached out to Adam this morning to see if he's gonna be able to make it, and I didn't hear back from him. So we'll see if he's able to come today. But uh, Corey, I'm glad you're here because I was curious how your stuff is going. Um, so today we don't have a whole lot of pull request to go through because the Etherpad is totally down at the moment. So until that gets fixed, I wasn't able to go through and look at stuff I had previously done. I do have a couple of new PRs I guess I can go through here. Um, but then I was hoping after that, Corey, we could talk about what you've been working on, get an update from you. Okay, so new PRs this week. Uh, there is an update to the mClock work. That is to add a high priority queue for operations. And Rodin and a couple of folks have actually reviewed that now. So I think that's just in progress. Let's see. We've got Corey. I listed yours. I think we talked about it a little bit before, but your new PR here, and it looks like Igor uh, made a couple of comments in there. That was maybe 2 weeks ago. So I guess hopefully you've seen those. And then we've got two closed PRs I saw. One, it was a fix for a race condition in onode put, but the author closed that in favor of Igor's PR that also is working on uh, uh, some of the same stuff in onode pinning, which I guess maybe also fixes this issue. Um, and then there was a PR merged by Neha. This was to reduce backfill and recovery default limits for mClock and other optimizations. I think I probably listed that in one of the previous performance meetings because it's a couple weeks old now. But in any event, that's why I looked at it anyway this morning with my limited ability to go back and update previous ones. So anything I missed, guys, from anybody? All right, well then, Corey, how's it going?
Hey, yeah, so it's going pretty well at this point. We got things stable just before the holidays by basically canceling all the backfills and stuff using one of the scripts I think DigitalOcean created, and then manually compacting as necessary for a few days to get through some of the existing deletions that were queued for PGs. And then eventually we got back to a point where things were stable, and then I've been out for a couple weeks since then until this week, so we haven't really followed up too much after that because of the holidays. But I've been getting back into it this week, and we're starting to think about trying an upgrade to try some of these things like your tuning settings for deleting or for using the deletion compaction filter and stuff like that, because we still have a lot of data we need to move around, and right now we really can't like let things move without having problems,
Sure.
since whenever PGs move we run into this delete issue, right? So there'll be more to come on that, I think, as we start testing some of those things we talked about last time. I don't have a ton of updates related specifically to that right now, but the one thing I did want to talk about that I have been testing for a couple days now is the latest RocksDB version, 7.8.3. And
Yeah.
there's one really interesting update in there from 7.7.0, which uh, is to allow range deletes to be iterated over. It's basically it skips the range delete tombstone. Um, it doesn't iterate over it at all. And I've tested this on some just test program type stuff, and it works as advertised extremely well. I think it could be a huge win for Ceph.
Okay.
And in particular, in these scenarios, if we start using the delete range to delete these kinds of ranges like the PG stuff, it basically avoids the iteration issue altogether.
Wow. Okay. Okay. We should we should get that into testing soon then. I know someone had a PR for updating to a newer RocksDB, but I don't know if it was 7.8 or uh, if it was something slightly older than that. But it sounds like we should. This is like a killer thing that we should try to get in. Maybe killer
I
is the
think
wrong word to use.
I think he did update it to this latest version that was released, 7.8.3, a week or two ago.
Oh, did we merge
And
that?
no, I don't think it's been merged, but he did update the PR because he originally updated it to a previous release. I think that was from like November, but
Okay.
so, so yeah, I don't know. It definitely seems like it's something that would be worth testing, and then probably going through and looking at where we could be using delete range instead of iterating over and doing individual,
Yeah.
since that seems to be a lot more efficient with this improvement to RocksDB that they've made recently.
Yeah. Josh, what's the freeze window on Reef looking like?
Looking like the end of January.
Okay, so if we got this in right now, well, are we is the lab are we doing any testing right now?
No, right now the VPN's down, so everything's down
Yeah.
today. But so it
Yeah,
was working
okay.
yesterday. So once the VPN's back, it should be back hopefully next day or
Yeah.
two.
I mean, with like a new RocksDB like this, I really wanted to go through a lot of testing, but we could try to merge this like once we've got the lab back up.
Yeah, I think that's a good candidate for testing out and seeing as soon as we can.
Yeah, I think so. Corey, I think you've convinced me that we should try to get this in.
There are some other interesting changes in there too that I haven't really tested directly because they weren't as relevant to this particular case, but it looks like there's quite a bit of good stuff in that update that might help in different scenarios. So
Yeah, yeah.
worth,
It. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so worth testing at least probably.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of changes, and a lot of them sound really good. It's just, I'm every time we do a RapsDB update, it really kind of makes me nervous. They have a habit of changing a lot of code behind the scenes,
Oh,
which is good and bad.
yep.
So okay, I I think you've convinced me, and though that we should try. So I'll go back and look at that PR to update, and maybe we can once we've got the VPN restored, we can try to get that into testing right away.
Cool.
Awesome.
Other
Um,
than that, I guess the only other thing that I'll comment on, I guess, related to the previous discussion is that the fact that our DB is spilling over to hard drives is definitely a huge part of the problem in our case, in terms of the compaction is just taking a really long time, both online and offline. And I think they're just kind of getting behind and not able to clean up tombstones effectively for that reason.
okay,
So we're continuing to look into that and try to figure out what we can do short term, since obviously like the RocksDB upgrade type path isn't going to be a short term thing for Pacific in production. But yeah, I'll get back on these meetings in the next couple of weeks, hopefully with more updates related to that.
cool. Can you tell right now when you spill over to the disk, are you seeing good I/O patterns to the hard drive when you're doing reads and writes for the SSD files?
That's something else, we still need to look at because the drive obviously is also used for the data, so I need to separate it. I think we touched on that briefly at the end of our call last time about approaches for maybe doing that and seeing what what IO is coming from the data path versus the DB path. But no, I haven't really looked into that yet. It is on my list, though.
Okay. If I remember right, I think you're gonna land typically in a different section of the disk for the SSD files, just with the way that BlueStore tends to do it, or BlueFast, I guess. Um, I I think that's true if you're doing a completely uh, maybe. You might be able to notice that the SST files tend to land in a certain part of the disk, and that might then let you use something like block trace to just like grep for the right range or something.
Okay,
Um,
I'll look, I'll look
I,
into that.
I might be wrong on that, but I think that's the way it works. If not, you could always, well, it might be more work, but you could always stick it on like you could do a big hard drive like DB partition, or you could look at just the IOs that are going to the NVMe drive, I guess, right? Like you wouldn't expect different IO behavior between that and the hard drive. It should look the same. It should the SSD should just be faster. You might be able to do a block trace just on the NVMe drive that you have or the flash device you have, and look at what those IOs look like.
Okay.
And you don't have to change anything.
Yeah,
I'd
I'll
be
try
very
that.
curious. Yeah. Theoretically, you should see read ahead during reads for the, the SSD files during compaction, so they should be big reads. Like as you iterate over the range, right, to do the compaction, um, the you should be like reading ahead, like I think it's two megabytes for compaction. So I'd hope that's what we see.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like it'll be interesting. I'll definitely let you know.
Cool, cool. All right. Um, yeah, and I'll also be very curious to see if the other PR helps. Although maybe it's less important with the RocksDB changes that you mentioned. If we can start using delete range.
Yeah, I think it probably is less important because we don't care as much about when the delete range tombstones actually get compacted all the way down and removed if they don't affect our performance on iteration like they
Yeah.
apparently don't in this case. I basically tried a little test program using RocksDB different versions, and when I was using this latest version, it took 2 milliseconds to seek over that tombstone, whereas with older versions, by the way, it's 50 million keys, and it would take like 8 seconds. So a pretty huge difference. Obviously, it can completely seems it can completely skip over the tombstone in that case in the latest version.
So what you posted in the chat window here is it says that delete range users should see improvement in get/iterator performance from mutable memtable. So is it just affecting memtables then before they're marked immutable, or is it um, also for SSD files?
It's a good question. I guess I didn't actually test that specifically. I should, because that's a good point. So if I flush it after I flush RacksDB after creating the delete range, do I then see the performance issues again? I'll try that.
It, it's actually not necessarily horrible though, because that's the piece that's always been missing, the memtable piece. Like the stuff I did only affects the SST side of it. It doesn't affect the memtable side of it. So if this fixes the other problem, the two actually might be complementary.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
Okay,
can
cool.
try.
Yeah, I'll be super curious to hear what you find.
Yeah, I'll try it. I'll try it both ways. Then I'll try it without your tuning, and I'll try it with and see once things are flushed if it also what the performance impact is. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, cool, cool. All right, well, I don't have anything else, guys. I was hoping to talk, if Adam was able to come, I was hoping we could find out how his stuff is going. He's working on adding, making it so that you can add extents to an existing shared blob to reduce the number of shared blobs that we have for things like RBD mirroring. But then also more recently, he's been working on making it so that not just shared blobs, but blobs. When you add a new extent, you don't need to create a new blob. You can add that extent to an existing blob. And that's the more interesting new stuff that he's been working on. And I got the impression that maybe he's getting it to pass testing, so we might be ready soon for performance analysis. But that's I think he's still actively working on it. So that's all I know right now. So yeah, beyond that, anything else anyone want to bring up before we close? All right. Well, thanks for coming, guys, and talk to you next week. Have a great week.
Thanks, Mark.
You too, Mark.
Yep. Bye, everyone.